Friends, hi, namaskar, and a very warm welcome. Today, we have reached the 8th decade, the 1980s. Like all other decades, the 1980s has its own stories. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But in this decade, three things stand out. First, the world population growth in this decade is the fastest. All over the world, in all countries, the population grew, but in certain countries, particularly in the Middle East, the growth was as high as 4% per year. Second, in this decade, there is great advancement in the field of information technology. In fact, in the first half of the decade, Microsoft launches the DOS, that is the data operating system, which makes operations of computers, particularly the personal computers, very easy. And in the second half of the decade, Microsoft launches MS Office version 1.0 and later on upgrades it to the version 1.1. The introduction of MS Windows brings computers at the doorsteps of the common people. In this decade, also there is great popularity of internet and the advancement in the field of web and the www, that is World Wide Web, and other various applications of the internet. Thirdly, in the 80s, most of the countries move away from the planned economies and follow the laissez-faire or the free trade. This is particularly disturbs the communist economies, and by the end of the 1980s, in most of the places of the world, communism collapses. This decade sees for the first time shifting of manufacturing units from developed countries to the developing countries of Latin America and Asia. West Germany and Japan achieves tremendous economic growth in this decade and bypasses the economies of all other countries of the world. So with this backdrop, let me go a little bit deep into the story of Asia while you all sit back and relax. Let me start with Afghanistan. As you are aware that the Soviet Union attacked Afghanistan in 1979, and if they had hoped for a quick victory and complete annexation of Afghanistan, they were mistaken. There was resistance from the Islamic Mujahideen fighters all along, and there were various elements helping the Islamic Mujahideens. The main amongst them is the CIA, and it is told by many that in this decade, CIA propped up Al-Qaeda and its leader Osama bin Laden, who about 2 decades later caused the major mayhem in the entire world. Other countries to support the Afghan rebels are the Islamic countries, mainly Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. As the decade proceeded, Soviet Union understood that it would not be very easy to completely capture the hilly country of Afghanistan, and by staying in Afghanistan, their popularity in the world is also going down. So by the end of the decade, they decided to withdraw from Afghanistan. We now come to the Iraq-Iran war, which is another of the Middle East wars which took place in this decade, and this war took place between 1980 to 1988. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, but the Iraqis are accused of using banned chemical weapons not only on the Iranians but also on their own dissident Kurdis. Iran, who were not that well prepared for the war, had to send 15-year-old soldiers, and by 1988 they have had enough and they called for a peace treaty and the war ended. Next we come to two major assassinations that took place in this decade. In 1981, Anwar el-Sadat, the President of Egypt, was assassinated during a military exhibition in Cairo. The most probable reason for his assassination is that he has signed a peace treaty with Israel few years back in Camp David in USA. This treaty ending the hostilities between Egypt and Israel was not looked upon well by the other Arab leaders. In India in 1980 election, Indira Gandhi comes to power, but her second tenure is not smooth. There is terrorism and separatist movements in many of the states of India, and particularly in the border state of Punjab, the terrorists are very strong. The terrorist leader is Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala, and under his leadership, the Punjab terrorists take shelter in the holy temple of the Sikhs, the Golden Temple in Amritsar. This becomes the headquarters of the terrorists, and the things come to such a state that Indira Gandhi has no other alternative but to send the military into the Golden Temple. Though the military forces, after entering the temple, tackle the terrorists and kill a majority of them, including Bhindranwala, the entry of the military in the Golden Temple is not looked upon well by the Sikh population of Punjab, and on 31st October 1984, Indira Gandhi herself is gunned down by her military Sikh bodyguards, and after her killing, the entire nation plunges into an anti-Sikh riot, which is one of the worst riots in India after the 1947 partition riots. After about a week, better sense prevailed and the riots are slowly subsided. Congress elects Rajiv Gandhi, the son of Indira, as their leader, and he becomes the new Prime Minister. He prepones the election to the end of 1984, and riding on the sympathy wave, Congress comes to power with a very huge majority. This majority is nearly 75% of the seats. The newly formed Janata Party, which was formed only in 1980, can muster only 2 seats. Elsewhere in Asia, Pakistan's President Ziaul Haq, who had come to power in 1977-78 through a military coup, dies in a plane crash in 1988. He is the longest serving Pakistan president till date, having served a tenure of 10 years. However, after his death also, the military rule in Pakistan continues and the country is not gone back to the paths of democracy. The 1988 Summer Olympics is held in Seoul in South Korea, and this is only the second time that this prestigious tournament is held in Asia. The world waits anxiously for the dual in the men's 100-meter race between Canadian Ben Johnson and American Carl Lewis. Ben Johnson defeats Carl Lewis, wins the Olympic gold medal, and also sets a new world record. But in the very next day, he fails to pass a routine dope test, and performance enhancing substances are found in his urine sample. He is sent home in disgrace. He is stripped of the Olympic gold, which is awarded to Carl Lewis, and also his world record stands cancelled. This is the first time that an international athlete of such fame fails to pass a dope test, but this is not the last time, and it sets up a trend of banned substances being used by athletes in the world events. As the decade progresses, the ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka between the majority Sinhala community and the minority Tamil, Sri Lankan Tamils intensifies. The Sri Lankan Tamils have their supporters in neighboring Tamil Nadu in India, and there is support to the Tamil cause in Sri Lanka. The things come to such an end that the Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi deploys the Indian peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka. But this does not go down well, and though the conflict is actually under control, there is an attempt on Rajiv Gandhi by one Sri Lankan serviceman. Though the Congress had come to power with a big majority, by the end of its term, its popularity has gone down due to the various measures Rajiv Gandhi has taken, including the deployment of Indian Army in Sri Lanka, and in the elections held in 1989, no party gets a clear majority, and Congress, although is the single largest party, decides to sit in the opposition. A coalition government is formed under the Prime Ministership of Vishwanath Pratap Singh, who was previously the Home Minister in Rajiv Gandhi's cabinet. This coalition is a little bit wobbly coalition, and as the new decade is about to start, this coalition government takes control of the Indian government. As the decade closes, time now for me to close my program. Before going, let me ask you, had Microsoft not developed the Windows and released its two versions, would we have been in the same position today in the field of information technology? Viewers, please ponder. See you next time with the story of the rest of the world. Till then, thanks, namaste, and bye.